Welcome back to Easier Ways, our 12-step journey with Randy Hyden. We are on step 12. We are on the final step of this journey together. And Randy has been wonderful. It has been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation in particular because there's a lot that has been awakened and alive in me for after having taken this journey together with you. So before we begin, I would just like to remind you all that any time that you are spending reviewing this material, reviewing any of the books in the Living Library, reviewing Randy's book as well too, you can redeem all of those hours in the Living Library Time Bank, which will be shifting the system, shifting the way we treat each other, shifting the way our systems, work for us rather than us working for them. So that's the emerging story that's happening through the Living Library Time Bank. So we're going to go into step 12 today, Randy, and I'll start with the Under Earners Anonymous step 12, and then I'll ask you to recite the Easier Ways step 12. But here on the Under Earners Anonymous page website, it says step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We try to carry this message to compulsive under-earners and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Hmm. Okay, I'm going to have some reflection on that one in a moment, but I turn it to you now, Randy. Step 12 of Easier Ways.
As a result of these steps, we became aware of our authentic voice within. We came to realize our purpose and helped others find theirs.
Hmm. Yes, I really appreciate your version of step 12, the authentic voice within and realizing our own purpose and helping others find theirs. I prefer that language than the language of carrying the message to compulsive under earners. To me, that kind of when I'm reading that and I'm receiving that, it almost feels like it's a learned helplessness or a victimization. Um, because yeah, yeah, that's just what I'm sensing in that. But yeah, your authentic voice, your authentic voice. What does that mean to you?
Well, so as you mentioned about having a victim mentality, seeing, I thought the world was against me, you you were either doing something for me or you were against me. My opinions and my judgments, my again, all these ideas, these narratives in my head. If you didn't agree with me and stuff, you were threatening to me. I tried to impose my beliefs and such to reaffirm what I thought. Because again, I didn't even. As we talked about in the last session about trying to talk to water to a fish and stuff, that had been constantly with me. And again, referring to the ego, again, this manufactured sense of self that formed during my developmental years and stuff just solidified, amplified, and such. So yeah, it's amazing when you going from a lifetime of what's in it for me. See, that was one of my biggest challenges when I started going to a 12 steps meetings and such. I could not conceptualize that people would be nice to me and have no strings attached.
Yeah.
Just not happen. That is not how the world works. Yeah, I'm not going to be indebted to anyone or anything. I'm not going to accept your help. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's probably just was a defense mechanism, but that was my reality and such. And being around a supportive group of people that are just like, it's okay. You're just like us. You'll see over time. We all thought these same things in our own unique ways and stuff. And you know, we care about you, you know. And again, there was times when I thought it's like you care more about my well-being than I do and such. So whether that was the truth or not, that's how I saw it. So to go through a situation uh and have my beliefs about myself and the world challenged and stuff. It was uncomfortable at first. But it's really truly why I've been showing up and having these conversations. Like, frankly, it's again, my purpose in life. I referenced the liberation of love. Now that might be a little, yeah, I posted up on Facebook and it didn't get much response from it. It might, this is my concerns about being esoteric. Some people may think this is all wishful thinking and it's not real, and I do want to connect. You spoke to me, I don't think it was in the series of the 12 steps here, but there was a conversation where you talked about unconditional dignity. And maybe
Yeah.
perhaps that might be that is coming to the point of connecting within with our soul, our know what we know is right. Okay. Again, I have this cynical, it's like stop being all Pollyanna and stuff. Not everybody's good. There's people that want to exploit you and hurt you and stuff, step on your throat to get ahead kind of stuff. And again, that was defensive all the time. I had been betrayed, abandoned, hurt so badly I was never going to get hurt again. And to let down that defensiveness, that to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
uh, was scary, bigger than scary. But to get to the point where, yeah, I can open my heart and give and receive love unconditionally, that's what this voice thing is. Much as a musician, singers and such, or authors and stuff. When you think of somebody that, I don't know, the greats, but I think all artists have their fingerprints on their work. If you read Shakespeare, it's Shakespeare, and Hemingway is Hemingway, and such. The music of Beethoven or Chuck Berry, whoever it may be, you can listen to a Chuck Berry song, and you don't have to be somebody who's studied music history, and you just kind of like, I know that's this guy's music and stuff. And that's why I use the word voice for something again that I have had such a difficult time describing. But we can, again, we open ourselves up to the point where we can be hurt. But this comes back to that having that trust, that okayness, that knowing. It's like, yeah, I I can be hurt. I have been hurt. I don't deny this and such, but I understand what it's like to be the lonely man in a crowded room, and I know who I am right now, and I'd rather risk being hurt. I'd rather give freely with no expectation of thing coming back and people taking advantage of me and such. I don't see that I've lost really anything. I don't really concern myself with the same fears I had before. Go ahead and make a fool of me. I've made a fool of myself many times. I'm okay with it and such. Love is way more important than being embarrassed or losing something that's important to me or not getting something that's important to me. Um, so yeah, again, if love sounds like too big of a word or you're equating it to emotions and such, then maybe unconditional dignity, respecting the dignity in all life, and of course the same life that's within me. That's what keeps me hanging on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of that dignity is about acknowledging the fact and the stories that there are those who are wanting to intentionally hurt or to intentionally step on your throat, as you had described it as well too. And I find that that's for me, that's kind of where the work is, not bypassing that, not pretending it doesn't exist, but holding space for people to be treated with dignity after having been through something like that. I find that that's where there's a lot of there's a lot of dissonance because there's a lot of fear to even consider and to look at that. But I find, if we're going to be talking about what step 12 talks about as a spiritual awakening, um, I think that's important to understand and to look at the shadow, to be able to look at the shadow. I think that's where love has a gravity to it, where love has meaning as well too. So that brings us to this phrasing here in step 12 about had a spiritual awakening. I mean I can't really pinpoint, an exact moment where I've had a spiritual awakening. It's like the whole thing has been like a spiritual journey. And these 12 steps have amplified certain aspects of that. But I wanted to ask you, Randy, what does that mean to you? Having a spiritual awakening, what's that all about?
Back to hard to put into words. Uh, but the exercise of writing a book, of trying to communicate this. Um, it's the words I use are inner prosperity, which
Mhm.
again, this thing of under earners and such, that yeah, we may or may not have a material prosperity, but that inner prosperity, what I've been alluding to and stuff, this okayness, this again is, I don't know if love's the right word, but again, to have this love, much like the grandmother, who again, she wasn't so concerned about correcting me when or if you've ever had a grandmother, she's just more just loved you than tried to be a parent, kind of stuff. Yeah, there's a sense of coming home. That might be another way of saying it. So again, it's kind of, yeah, I'm safe here. I'm loved here. I'm appreciated. I don't need to put on act. I don't need to perform. I don't need to pretend. I can just be me. And we don't have to take life so seriously. Okay? We can enjoy the time together. So this coming home, wow. And again, this is my language. I'm sure other people will have their own way of describing it. But if you had experienced it, I think is you're nodding your head. There's this sensation. Again, it's just much as if I think in our conversation talked about, if it's cold, I know to put a jacket on. If it's hot, I take my jacket off. I don't necessarily need to overthink this. It's that same type of sensation. You just know this is right. And it's not a moral right. It's just, this is true. And this is not a factual true. It's the big T true. And as spoke in the other session about not needing arrogance or apology, I don't need to convince you of this. I went through a phase of trying to evangelize people in my spiritual beliefs and stuff, and I saw the futility of that, the insecurity of that. But I don't need to apologize either. There's certainly has been a time, and I even did it a little bit earlier about worrying about getting too esoteric about stuff. But this time it's more wanting to communicate as opposed to, I don't know, not be embarrassed, uh, and such. So yeah, yeah, it's hard to put into words.
Yeah. So in your framework, Randy, you talk about came to realize our purpose and helped others find theirs. What's your purpose, Randy?
The liberation of love.
Mm.
But I've gone through all kinds of phases of it. Connection, it was another word I used for a while. Collaboration was another word. I mean, again, this is part of why I understand that words, I don't know, are fluid, dynamic and such right now. Yeah. To be able to get to the point where, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I could be, but I'm okay with being wrong about this, that I believe within all of us there's a love that's beyond understanding. And all of us can open our hearts to give and receive a love that is life changing for them and for others, and such. So if these conversations, the books, the blog posts, the Facebook posts, and all those kind of stuff can help connect and collaborate and work with other people in the generation of having the collective consciousness, have a few more epiphanies, have a whole wow. We're all the Course in Miracles talks about how we're all teachers. It's not like, well, are you or are you not been gifted in this? No, it's have you or have you not accepted the invitation to share what I've been trying to articulate with others? Much again, this is the thing in sobriety. All the men that helped me were paying it forward. They had gone through their own human experience, their own process of surrendering, and coming out of it healthier, different. We might say use the word recovered. You've recovered that love that's in your heart, and they want to help anyone else who's seeking it. But there does come a point where there's no longer a need to really to seek it, but more to share it. And that's my voice is I'm sharing in my own unique way what was been freely given to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'd like to think that that's what these recordings, that's what these conversations we've had have been all about now is sharing. And I'm looking at this, the phrasing of this 12th step here at Underearners Anonymous, carrying the message to compulsive underearners and practice these principles in all of our affairs. Um, that's where what comes up for me is now we've kind of held space really for appreciation. And part of the methodology that I use is when we're moving towards possibility, when we spend enough time in appreciation, we start to have the possibility conversations. So one possibility is that these recordings will be received by those who are ready to hear it or those who are ready to receive it, and the hours earned is starting to tell a different story about being a compulsive under earner. As far as I'm concerned, because of the way our cultural conditioning teaches us that we are somehow less than others, or we have to earn our place in society, or we have to suffer to have achievement. um Being an under earner has nothing to do, to me, with how much money we have or how much money we earn. It's really starting to understand our true value and our true worth. So one of the possibilities that could come from this is having others join us, in this journey. We might do another 12 steps. I don't know yet. One of the things that I've been inspired to start looking at as well is producing a series about using divination techniques in in tandem with investment research or business research, to help people build build their net worth as well too, as far as financial means. So there's a lot of possibilities that have been coming up that I credit for being on this journey with you, Randy. As you are looking ahead, and maybe it's not necessary to look ahead, but even just looking at right now, what possibilities have been emerging for you that you might see as being a result of going through these 12 steps again?
Well, yeah, I I really want to connect and build a network of people that have the lived experience of the 12 steps. There's more than one person I've mentioned that to or asked, do you think every human being can benefit from the 12 step process? And if you've gone through it, I have yet to find somebody who doesn't say, "Oh yeah, I think everyone can benefit from it." Now, a lot of times they will add in and stuff, but nobody's going to do this until they're ready,
Right.
until they're in a situation. Usually that means, again, for myself and many I've met and stuff, we tried every other possible way, and eventually it came to the point where we had to do something radical, and that was surrender and accept some help. And what I've been referring to, unlearning the beliefs of who we are and our worldview, our relationship with life. Um, but yeah, I'd love to have a group of people, again, whatever your first step is on, sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever, under earning and stuff like that. But you've gone through this and want to help more than those who identify with the problem that you begin with. Okay. Because again, the human condition, we all are suffering. Again, my language is as far as admitting we can't control things is a cause for suffering. Um, we want to control things. Again, we want to have outcomes that are preferential. We're avoiding, the emotional pain, and we're pursuing pleasure. And of course, life is not that way. So again, helping people get past the victimhood and get into an empowerment that is not about an individual that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. It's again, it's the unlearning and stuff. It's like, no, if it's meant to be, it's going to be. And I show up and I just be me, warts and all, doing things that I'd prefer not to and such. But if there's a freedom there again, there's this liberation. It's like, yeah, I like me. Some days I love me and I love life, and because I meet these people that make life worth living, connections, the X factor. So again, to build up a network, however big or how small and such as it is, and we try bringing this message out to people that are at their wits' end. The world doesn't make sense. It sure seems like we're gonna annihilate each other and such, which could happen. There is the technology now in this day and age with, nuclear weapons that, yeah, okay, it could. And again, it's kind of under that. I have no control over that. I there's a flash of bright light and stuff here. Again, actually, yeah, I'd like it to be quick. I don't want to. I don't have it in me to do a zombie apocalypse stuff. But anyway, again, being a little lighthearted on this stuff. Um, for those, yeah, that are sincerely worried about that kind of stuff, and for their children and their children's children, and such, for us to come together and not preach anything, but just be present like you are with me. That's actually in the book, as far as my expression of what a 12 step is just being present and listen, not to try to fix anybody. Again, that's why that's another important factor that gets brought up in these conversations and again, my writings and stuff. If you can see yourself and the other person that you're with not as broken, but just as a human who's, again, adopted these stories, these behavior patterns and stuff that cause unintended consequences. Um, yeah, it's just you're just present to them, and this connection, it was very healing for me, and I believe for most people because we get guarded. We don't earn ourselves all the time, if ever, you know. And that's maybe why love is a word that gets used for this because it's really, it takes either a parent or a peer or a lover and such where you can finally let the guard down and be yourself. And then that's when it kind of gets to the whole, yeah, guess there's a reason for being alive. This is the good stuff. But yeah, there's so many dysfunctional families. There's so many dysfunctional professional, personal relationships. There's so many dysfunctional romances and stuff that some of this that I'm referring to could seem, I don't know, wishful thinking, airy-fairy, kind of stuff. Randy, that's not really how the world is. And I respect that because if you have that viewpoint and stuff, you've lived in a way uh, that again confirms your suspicions. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That
I know I'm rambling and stuff, but yeah, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, and again, I think it comes back to role modeling too. We're role modeling the spaces. I mean, it's going to do what it's going to do out there, but here, in the space between you and me, we are role modeling, the, you know, the way things can be, whether or not people want to believe it's airy fairy or not realistic. I mean, that's okay. I mean, that might even also be, a revelation of the stories, that's being told and, whether or not we want to keep telling that story or if we're ready to tell a new story. I know what I've learned through all of this as well too is that I know I'm becoming more aware and appreciative of my gifts. And I know that my gifts are understanding how systems malfunction and become dysfunctional, and I'm not really looking to fix a broken system anymore. I'm ready to build a new system. So that's one of the things that really came alive for me, especially in these last couple weeks. And another thing is, opening up the possibility now that after, we refer others to these conversations, if anyone wants to just help us build, I kind of like think of it as I've been using the analogy recently, and this has been an analogy that I've been really reflecting on for a while when I think about, building new systems and all of that. It's to me, from like a psychological perspective, it's like we're in the great flood again. Like you said, the world's bonkers. People are fighting each other, they're fighting the bad guys, in the flood. And I realized my purpose is to build the ark. And I mean, hey, you guys want to go fight other people while it's raining outside? Be my guest. Who wants to come with me and help build this ark? And that's kind of what I feel like these conversations are kind of putting the signal up, putting the flag up and saying, hey, Randy and Mike are role modeling, ways we can be different, we can be with each other. And if somebody finds value in that and somebody finds comfort in that and even maybe even enjoyment in it, we can build new infrastructures based on that alone. So that's my invitation that I'd like to see these conversations continue and include others, who might resonate with this, who are willing to kind of take a step out of the comfort zone and say, you know what? Yeah, things can be easier. There are easier ways. There are, I can show up differently with Randy. I can show up differently in this space. And yeah, so that's going to be part of my closing thoughts here as we're running up against the end of the hour and the end of the 12th step. But Randy, what's the highest outcome that you would like to experience in this lifetime? And that's what we'll
Well,
leave
this
our
this
our
is at
listener
the
with.
end. This is the beginning. When you were
Yeah.
sharing that, it's like, you know what? It sounds a lot like communes and the hippies had and such that in the 60s and 70s. Maybe instead of calling them communes, call them colonies. And we come
Hmm.
together and in these communities where, yeah, basically we could be self-governed, live amongst, the nation and stuff, understand that we have the sovereignty, the protection of the governments around there if the government does what it's supposed to do to some degree and stuff. But taking care of each other. It's like there would be in this vision that I have as far as there's you have the elders and you have the young ones and such. We have the hunters and the gatherers, and you have the people, the caregivers and the medicine men, all that type of stuff that everybody is actively making a contribution to the colony. And I guess the leader's purpose would be to help individuals recognize that they all have gifts and talents and something to contribute to the society. Um, remind people that there is enough. It may seem like this harvest season it's going to be tight. We're not going to have enough to get through the winter and stuff like that. But the leaders will be the ones that remind people of the simple truth that we're better together and we'll get through this as long as we stay unified and together. Yeah, I'd really, really like to see that. And who knows, the way things are going, it might be the only way that humanity does survive is again, we colonize and start having these small groups that take care of each other, and then heck, repeats over where all of a sudden now one of them decides that they want to go invade the other colony and take them and all that kind of stuff. But because, history does repeat itself. But to get through this situation that we're it's imminent and stuff, I think this colonization is probably that my interpretation of what you were just expressing, Mike, is it's not necessarily just Zoom conversations. I think we're going to have to live together with each other and help each other out in meaningful, very, very real, pragmatic ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and transcending the need for our group to be better than another group and just including all groups and adapting with that diversity as well. So that is my prayer. That is my prayer. So Randy, thank you so much. This has been a joy, and thank you all for joining us for these 12 steps. And I'm Mike Schumann. This is Randy Hyden on behalf of both of us. Thank you. Thank you very much.